and welcome back to the Tree of Life podcast. My name is Jacob Toddson.
And I'm QV May.
Oh, we did pretty good. Oh, that was bad. Well, welcome back. So this is like episode something between 14 and 18. I don't remember anymore, but it's summer. That's the most important part.
Oh,
Happy summer
yes.
solstice to you, Kubi.
Happy summer solstice. Did you have a good one? What were you doing for it?
So my, increasingly pedestrian life, I try to find ways to blend the pagan, the ethereal with my everyday. And that's definitely been an interesting challenge for me this last year, going from this world traveling, living the Odinic life to, you know, living in a very normal place. And so what I did this
Mm.
solstice is I actually just woke up really early and I went on a solstice bike ride, and just enjoyed the beautiful morning, because it was seriously like the day of the solstice was the last cool summer day we will have. Like it was like 80 degrees Fahrenheit, 60 in the morning for
That's
you Celsius people out there. It was like nice. It was a nice day. But the next day it went up to like 38 degrees Celsius, 98 degrees Fahrenheit. And so it was
oh
like, if you want to like enjoy the beauty of the sun, now is the time. Get out there.
yeah. You don't want to be like a dried husk of a man on a bike, do you? It's like burnt to
Awful.
smithereens when it's too hot.
Yeah. No, I mean, honestly, like I've really gotten into bike riding this year. I'm partially because of my time in Europe, meeting so many people that ride bikes and don't even own a car. In America, that's almost seen as like you're poor. Like you almost has this perception of like, oh, you just can't afford a car if you ride a bike. But
Yeah.
after being in Europe, it's like it's actually more common in some places like Denmark or Netherlands, and to ride a bike than it is to own a car. And I've really enjoyed doing it here.
Yeah, it's so healthy, isn't it? And it's such a nice, underrated way to connect with nature. I mean, if I could ride a bike, I would. They say it's the one skill you can't forget. They're like, oh, once you've learned how to ride a bike, you never forget. Well, I forgot. I used to ride a bike all the time, and now if I try and get on a bike, I fall off within half an hour. So I need to relearn again.
Yeah. Oh, you just reminded me of such. We were just talking about Adriel before the podcast started, which hopefully he listens to us one day. But Adriel, like when I was in Glastonbury last year, like he was really wanted to ride bikes to Wells, which sounds
Oh
like a
yeah.
lovely ride. It's just like a really beautiful path. But we didn't have them, so he was like reaching out on Facebook, contacting people to try to find this second bike so we could have this romantic bike ride into Wells. And he finds one and he's so excited, and he comes up to me and he brings me the most decrepit looking bike I have ever seen. It is just completely rusted over, like the tires are completely dry rotted, and he's just like, it'll be perfect.
Oh,
And
and was
I'm
it?
like,
How did that end up?
I was like, I am not riding that. We are taking the bus. It'll be okay. And luckily, I think it ended up like raining that day, so it was like kind of worked out. But I was just like, no, I'm not riding that. And then I think someone even said like the bike owner said it like broke the next day.
Oh, well, there we go. Call
Yeah.
yourself to profit. Oh,
But anyways,
Solstice
how
was
was Solstice and Glastonbury?
yeah, Solstice in Glastonbury was, I mean, as you'd expect, rammed with people that aren't normally in Glastonbury. Um, we were actually playing at a festival. We're in a band. I don't know if I've mentioned before.
We mentioned,
It's a
yeah,
side
mention again.
quest. I'm in a band called the Songs of Arwen, and we write proto-Celtic songs, basically, like reinvigorating the Celtic pagan words of our ancestors. And we did our first festival gig at a local little festival called Crops Not Shops. This happens to be near Glastonbury, so we had great fun in telling everyone we were headlining at Glastonbury Festival, even though we definitely weren't. So that was great. We were at the festival over that weekend, and then ended up making friends with some random people. It's very classic festival cliche stuff. Putting one of them in the boot, driving to Glastonbury at 2 a.m. and ascending the tour at 3 a.m. for the sunrise, which was beautiful, but yeah, very busy. It didn't feel as sacred as I wanted it to
Mm.
feel, or as I remember it being. But it's one of those things solstice, isn't it? It's always got like a very strong charge. There's always a lot of excitement. And so it does attract sort of parties and raves and things more than the calm and the sacred stillness with the land.
Yeah. So you're just saying
So
that you're an old woman and you don't like that anymore.
I think so, yeah. I think so. Yeah, I've hit 37 this year, and now I am done with all-nighters.
Yeah,
Yeah, but it was still good for its kind of, the mad hurrah of climbing the tour. It's
yeah.
really always fun, isn't it?
So what's done at the solstice? Is anything particular done? Or is it mostly people just watching the sunrise?
Um, well, you get a lot of people. It's probably the busiest up on the tour of all of the celebrations, but not in a particularly sacred way. Unfortunately, it's getting a little
Hmm.
bit like Stonehenge here, and sort of people see it as an opportunity just to come and rave on the tour for some
Oh yeah,
reason.
yeah.
So there's that, but there are our sort of spiritual elders in the community. They do a beautiful little ceremony um, up on the tour, and yeah, that's pretty much it. There's not an awful lot that happens for the summer solstice here, but it gathers so many people.
Yeah. No, you
Um,
just reminded me like something I really want to try to do here, and I've not found the inspiration to really get going with it or know when to start. Is to start just doing some kind of solstice celebration here. Like I think last year we talked about me going to Serpent Mounds, and
yes.
just doing it. And I just don't know quite where the energy feels right. Serpent Mounds is kind of a weird place, just like because of the people who own it.
Yeah.
Um, it's like a non-profit that doesn't care about religion or spirituality or the ancient beliefs. It's like they just care about making money. And so it's like part of me wants to like almost choose a park around here and just be like, fuck it, I'm just gonna do it.
I know you were talking about an illegal fire last time I spoke to you.
Oh yeah, we didn't end up doing the illegal fire.
Oh,
I was not
disappointing.
arrested. It was a nice time though. That was one of those kind of events that when I was, actually conducting it, it's really hard to tell how everyone's experience was,
Mm,
because everyone was kind of quiet, and then I was like, oh, okay, so it was hard to get that energy out. But the nice thing
yeah,
was, is afterwards, so many people messaged me just about how incredible an experience it was, and I think a lot of that lends to the American identity of spirituality. Is it's just a very sleep here still. There's
yeah,
certain
yeah.
places that's more awake, but definitely like where I'm at in Ohio, it is not awake, and there's very
Oh,
few people who are not who are like aware of it, and so yeah,
oh,
I
it's
think
a
people are just a bit more
shame.
sleepy.
Yeah, it's a real shame. And but I suppose that maybe it brings it more back to the sort of personal rituals that you can do with the land, like the more kind of discreet, the less obvious ceremonies. If people aren't gathering so much over there, it's
Yeah.
those. It does bring it to a closer relationship with yourself in these seasons, doesn't it?
Oh, I mean, certainly. Like I've there's like a beautiful fountain right outside my place. It's like a public fountain, and I go out there all the time and like leave offerings.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah, and
yeah.
just have little moments with it, and people pick up on it, and then there's a few parks that people have caught me just playing my flute in the streams and the rivers, and so in those little moments, it's not like people I think look and are like, who's that? What's that freak doing over there? Like most people seem to
Yeah.
look like out of curiosity because it's not something they're used to seeing.
That's so good. And I always encourage people to do things like this and just even connecting with trees and a bit of tree hugging because the more people do it, the more it gives people permission to do it because I see
Yeah.
it, it becomes normalized. It's like exposure therapy, it's like it's a good thing. It's a really good
Yeah,
thing.
and I really encourage, like, obviously it's not like I'm talking to them, but I really like when people come and ask me a question. Actually, I really love it, even if they're a little on the negative side. Like, what are you doing
Yeah.
over here? It's like I'm just like, oh, we're just having a celebration of the sun. Do you like the sun? How do you feel about the sun? You know?
Yeah. That's a hard one to get a negative response to, is it? Do you like the
Yeah, yeah.
sun?
The sun's
Yeah.
dope, isn't it? Like, what else is dope? Air conditioning. I know we talked about this before we hit record, and I know you don't
Oh,
have it over there.
no. No,
Yeah,
well, no air conditioning,
yeah.
sadly.
But like your houses are a little bit more insulated though, typically. Like they stay all right. Like how's it right now?
I mean, I am definitely a child of the sun. There's no
Oh
such
yeah.
thing as too warm for me. So I'm the wrong person to ask because you could put me in a sauna and I'd be quite happy there all day. You know what
I'm
I mean?
fairly certain there
So
was a time that like when I was staying over at your place, like you came and gave me a hug, and I think you sleep in a sauna.
yeah,
And it's
yeah,
just like
yeah.
you like came downstairs and like you were like, "Oh, hi," and you like gave me a hug, and you were like molten lava.
Yeah, I've been known to take hot water bottles up on the colder evenings in the middle of all like August. I'm like crazy like that. It's so nice to be warm. There's no such thing as too warm.
Yeah. We're taking a brief pause here because we don't have sponsors. We're not that cool. No one wants to give us money to like talk about their stuff. So we have to talk about our stuff. So if you want to support Kubi and I as creative types, this is how you do it. Kubi, how can people support you? And what can you give them back in return?
Oh, well, I am offering a 2-year training called the Path of the Oak, which can be found on my website. So the link is below on the video for that. And it's a 2-year training in druidry, herbs, ancestral magic, all of the good things. It can be completed from anywhere in the world or with me in person in Glastonbury. So that's just a beautiful way to learn how to step into a magical life, essentially. What
Yes,
about
and
you, Jacob?
for me, as I was picking up, I actually just got 2 more copies delivered, so I could do promotional work. I've given them away, but I've written a little book called The Glastonbury Tourist that you can purchase on Amazon. It is approved by so many 18 reviews on Amazon, but truly, this this work really is a combination of so much of my spiritual journeys, taking place in the lands of Avalon, with a lot of the whimsical characters I've met along my way, kind of compiled into this story. So if you want to support me directly, get a cool story in the process. That's a really great way. And then additionally, if you want to support me on Patreon, I offer kind of like monthly challenges to you, where I make you take cold showers and fast and things like that. But it's been fun. So yeah, if you want to support me that way, that'd be great. Otherwise, check my YouTube videos out. And with that, let's get back to this conversation on adventures during the summertime. Is my critique of air conditioning is that it allows us to be hermits in the summer. And that's a very interesting thing because our ancestors were never really allowed to be hermits in the summer. Like you couldn't hide unless you
Mm.
were like in a cave.
Yeah,
Otherwise,
yeah.
the windows were open, the doors were open, the outside became the inside. Because if you
Mm.
didn't, you were like melting. Like you had to have all your windows open all the time.
That's so true. It's a weird time that we're living in on planet Earth because now we're sort of able to avoid the seasons. It's the same with winter as well. With
Yeah.
central heating, it's like, a fire doesn't necessarily need to be lit anymore, which would bring people together. And the summer is the same for the reasons you just mentioned. So it's because a lot of people say to me, what happens in July, in terms of like the pagan seasonal kind of calendar or the Celtic wheel. And it's a weird one, but it's one of those odd months where there's not a celebration. It's it's just a month of, it's the month of July. It's the peak of the summer. And for most people still, people go traveling, don't they? They go traveling, they go abroad, they go on holiday this time of year. And I do think that's an ancestral memory. I think we've always done that. And perhaps that's when our ancestors were most nomadic because it would have been easiest to travel across the land at these times, without battling against harsh weather conditions, things like that.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting, like the concept of a holiday, anyways. Like, is it a fairly modern concept? Taking time to go to the beach and things. But there were elements of that in the past. We had pilgrimages, which were a
Yeah.
religious holiday in a way.
And even before that, I think we had, sort of spiritual quests. When we're looking at the kind of pagan ancestors, there's a lot of stories in the Irish folklore about, things like Fionn from the Fianna, who's like a warrior, who was born, cast on the outskirts of society and raised by 2 women. One of them's a druid, the other one's a warrior. And then he goes through all of these adventures and these journeys, and they all feature spiritual initiations that he has to face before he comes back as this like established warrior, this man. And I think that is very much symbolic of almost like it could be a metaphor for the hero's journey, but I also think those are achieved through pilgrimages and adventures. And I feel like in our generation, we're seeing the return of the gap year, aren't we? That's something that, a lot of people do now. It's quite common to get out of college and go on a gap year. And I'm really glad to see this because I think it does take going away from home, leaving home, maybe for a year, to individuate yourself in the world as somebody unique or separate from your family, and to learn what your spiritual gifts are, to face the challenges of the world as an individual, and then to return back as a different sort of more mature, spiritually developed version of yourself. So it's I think we're almost doing a full circle back to the pagan times where these spiritual quests would have been more prevalent. Especially if you think about King Arthur as well, the Grail quests, it's all about that as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's a big part of like the hero's journey is finding the gift, the chalice, there's so many different the
Mm.
elixir of life. And that's different for everyone. And as what I've been told, you can go on many different hero's journeys within your life. They don't always, you're almost always on one. You're at some part of it. But
Yeah.
definitely when it comes to like the gap years, for me, I think it's very interesting because if, me having a child in the future, I would not encourage them to go to college, like university, immediately after getting out of primary schools and elementaries and high schools and
Mm.
whatnot. I would encourage them instead to take that gap year.
Yeah.
Because, when I graduated high school at 17, I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life.
Mm.
And to go into college, into university, and not knowing what you actually want to do is incredibly dangerous, especially in the US where it's
Mhm.
so expensive to go to college. Um, every single one of my high school friends that went to college immediately after high school failed and dropped out.
Oh, isn't that interesting? And do you think
Yeah,
that's because they were rushed into that process of deciding what they
100%.
wanted to do?
Yeah,
Yeah.
because they didn't know what to do. And then not to mention like the first time, I grew up in a small town for the most part. And to go from a small town to that college and university environment and having the parties, having the drinks and all the vices that you want. It's so incredibly alluring. And then also to have university at the same time is a really volatile combination. But that's why I say take your gap year and go party and do all the vices for that year
Yeah.
and then go to uni.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I did that. I was lucky enough that I could, well, I left, I tried doing a year of college and dropped out and just went traveling because I had one of those kind of spirits, where it was like I'd run out of like patience and commitment, I suppose, to the school system. And I had a lot of adventure in my soul. And I was very, very young when I went. I was like only just turned 18 and did a full gap year and traveled the world and stayed with like indigenous tribes and, incredible experiences and lived in a tent for most of it. And it really like weathered my soul in the best possible way at that age. I came back home and I was clear about who I was and I was clear about what I wanted to do with my life. And I honestly don't feel like I've changed too much since then. Hopefully matured a bit
Right.
and kind of delayered some of the things that you need to delayer as you become an adult. But my core soul, I feel like I knew myself very early on because of that gap year.
Yeah.
You know, I was kind of
Well,
thrown into the world and just layering,
yeah,
learn how to swim.
the place I'm bartending right now, a lot of the people are like 20 and 21
Mhm.
and doing university and stuff like that. And it's funny talking to them because I'm sitting here and I feel like this wise old man at 31. They're just like talking to me about like, all these big dilemmas they're having. And I'm just like, easy child. You won't even know who you are for a few more years.
Smoking a
Like
pipe.
yeah, you need to chill out. Like I tell them all the time,
Yeah.
like I did not know truly who I was until I was like 28, 29, and I started taking those journeys, and I started going on those adventures. That is so incredibly important. And I think again, we live in a world in the society that makes it seem like those aren't possible. I
Yes,
don't think people realize how little money I did what I did cost me, because
absolutely.
I just shed everything. Like, I shed all the possessions, all the stuff around me, and
Yeah.
it makes you lighter and allows you to do those things. But yeah, of course, if you have your $1,400 smartphone and and all this and your $40,000 car, like of course you're not going to be able to do it. But don't have those things.
Yeah. I mean, really, if you think about it, you shedding your life at that point in time really has become the making of you. It's what your whole YouTube has come from. It's been born out of that decision, wasn't it?
Yeah. Oh,
And
for sure.
everything that you've done over the last few years. So I feel like you've actually really done, justice to the hero's journey and that spiritual pilgrimage that all the folklore talks about in the pagan world.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And and even looking back now, again, I think it's just great irony that I
Mm.
live within 30 miles of where I was born now. Like,
Yeah.
I was gallivanting in Estonia a year or two ago, and now here I am 30 miles from where I was born.
Well, that is
It's crazy.
it's the classic hero's journey, isn't it?
Yeah.
You come back round with everything you've learned and then you reoffer it to the village as a man. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. I love that.
No, it's incredible. And I think we need this a little bit more. I think there is like a global thing going on. Like you hear it in every country is having an issue where the countryside is becoming depopulated. A lot of people are moving to the
Yeah.
major cities, young people looking for work and things like that, which is a natural evolution. It makes sense. But I do think that, we need more people in the younger generations that are going to these big cities. Like, that's great. Go to the big cities, learn, have your experiences, gain work experience. But we also need to realize that as we mature, we actually do need to start going back into the countryside, I think, a little bit more, and giving
Mm.
back to those communities. And otherwise, I think we're destined to have almost like the split in humanity between the city people and the country people. We can't become
Oh
stagnant
yeah.
on both ends of that. We have to have a cycle of it.
Yeah, because I mean, it's only when you're in the countryside, living with less, that you connect more with the nature of life itself and the spirit of life. And it's the difference between a gap year where you go and just get raucously pissed every night and, run around cities
Yeah,
versus a gap year where you've got a tent and you've got, like you said, shed all your belongings and you go and stay with indigenous tribes, or, you really get into the spirit of a place, or you just, you really live, in the
yeah,
gnarly roots of reality. And for me, that is where the hero's journey happens. It's in the less is more moments of
yeah.
life.
Oh, for sure. I mean, my some of my fondest memories from my travels were always the ones that didn't cost me any money. The ones from bred purely from the people I met or the random encounters that I had. Those are the
Yeah.
ones that stick out to me. And I think again, a lot of people have this idea of, in order to have adventures, you got to go stay in the Holiday Inn and you got to
Yeah.
go stay in the Hilton or whatever, and go to the fancy pubs. It's like, no, a lot of the times I was going to the Morrisons and, like
Yeah.
eating my pre-made Morrisons meals.
I mean, exactly. That's where the real adventure begins, in the Morrison Saver snack section. But
Yeah.
it's so true, isn't it? I mean, I know a few people that do these pilgrimages where they'll walk. In fact, they call it singing for their supper. It's a couple of lads, and they've walked across the whole of England. I think they went as far as Scotland with no money. They left home with no money and just a backpack with their tent or whatever, and they would sing for their supper every single evening, just with donations. And they'd always find that they could sleep somewhere, and even if it was under a tree. We call that the cathedral roof of leaves, the greatest hotel there ever was. Or they would, you can sleep in churches for free in England. You can just stay there overnight most of the time. So there are ways of really going back to those old pilgrimage styles of adventure that cost nothing, but they fill your soul with so much like deep, rooted the riches of the
Yeah.
soul, you know.
Well, and
Um,
this a great,
yeah.
parallel to like the UK. So the Fife coastal path in Scotland, you have starts in Dunfermline oh, I can't remember what church it is, but it starts in a church there and it goes all the way to St. Andrews. and it's like
Oh,
76 miles, and it's the old Pilgrim Way. And so you would stop at all these different sites. It's where Robert the Bruce is buried, is where it starts. And St. Andrews was a massive cathedral. It's destroyed
mm.
now. Interestingly enough, what is on that route is Donino's Den, which is the Druid Den in Scotland.
Ooh.
And so it kind of
Oh,
allures the idea that this was a pilgrim route before, obviously, the Christian era. And I think what you just said is you get, this spiritual, just a spiritual feeling from these pilgrimages. It doesn't
yeah.
matter if you're Christian, pagan, whatever. At the end of the
Mhm.
day, just the act of walking 76 miles between two places without any dream of what's going to happen to you.
Yeah.
I mean, look at what is it? The Canterbury Tales is basically that.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. It's that process of you're when you're forced to surrender to life. So when you don't know where your next meal is coming from, don't know where your next bed is going to be, then you have to surrender and let life catch you. And that is a massive part of spiritually evolving as a person, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Like, again, going back to this myth, this made up child I have. Again, if someone, my child turned 17 or 18, um, and I think I would feel better if they said, Dad, I want to go on a spiritual pilgrimage and not know where my next meal is going to be versus I want to spend a ton of money and go to university. I think I would feel better if they went on that journey, even though if it would be dangerous,
Yeah.
of course. But at the same time, now that I've gone through it, like I will see them learning more from walking the
Mhm.
path of the pilgrim than walking the path of the scholar right away.
100%. 100%. It's so important to weather the soul, isn't it? I was going to ask, so obviously with the Celtic folklore, we've got the tales of Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table, the Grail quest, Fionn and the Fianna, and the warrior kind of class of adventures. Um, but I was wondering who would be the deity that you tap into, or are there any stories of travel and adventure from the kind of more Germanic areas?
Oh, all of it. Basically all
Is
of
it?
it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, Odin being the most, the biggest figure of that. Odin, basically every single story is about him going somewhere to doing something. There's hardly a story about Odin staying at home and watching Netflix. Most of his stories are about, I heard there's a really wise guy over that way. So I'm going to go talk to him real quick and see if I'm wiser than him. And so him
Okay.
walking there, or him saying like, ooh, someone has this really cool thing I want over there. So I'm going to go get that. And then one of my favorite stories early on was the story of, Odin's son Thor coming back from a journey. And so he's like on his way back, and then there's like a fjord that separates like his home from where Thor is, and there's a ferry between the two. And the ferryman is Odin in disguise, and they're like yelling at each other. Like, Thor is like, give me that ferry. And Odin's just like, oh, I slept with your wife. And it's just like
Oh,
this really
classic
like
gap year.
oh no, yeah, yeah. And they're just like yelling at each other, like, I'm glad you went on your gap year, son. Also, like, your mother's dead. Like,
Oh my God.
it's just like messing with them like a, crazy person. But yeah, so there's a lot of stories in the Germanic and the Norse about journeys. In fact, most of them are about journeys. And I think there is I was actually reflecting on this while we were talking, is I think one of the reasons people are so attracted to the Viking Age is because the identity and of the Viking is one of adventure. Is the story of someone hopping on a boat and going somewhere they don't know what they're going to do. Obviously
Mm,
we know that Vikings raided and pillaged, and those aren't necessarily good things, but the Vikings also explored. They went places
yeah.
unknown. They pointed their ship in a direction they had no idea what was going to be on the other side, and they did it.
It's
And I
kind of the spirit of the vagabond, isn't it?
Yeah,
The adventurer and the traveler. Mm.
yeah, because like most people don't talk about the Viking Age and the farmers. It's like, wow, I really wish I could be a farmer during the Viking Age. I just really want to sit on the fields. Like that was most people. Most people were doing that. But it's this
Yeah.
identity of the wayfarer, the wanderer, the adventurer. That's what people look
Yeah.
towards.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. It's yeah, that spirit of travel is still in people, I think. When I wonder if it is the same for women as much as men. I definitely had that spirit
Mm.
growing up as well. I really felt like if I wanted to expand my personality or grow spiritually, I needed to take myself out of the comfort zone and meet the challenges of life head on. So I feel like that is alive in human beings, isn't it? We remember that. It's an old ancestral memory. We know that it leads to spiritual growth, and that's why it's embedded in all of the, the Celtic and Germanic folklore, and that's it
Yeah.
underpins these spiritual stories that we read and lean towards with paganism.
Yeah, and I do think that the conversation, obviously one of our last episodes we talked about like sacred masculine, sacred feminine, and we do live
Mhm.
in a very interesting time because it was far more likely that a woman 100 years ago was just going to have a child very early. Our birth control wasn't as good, and it was just much more societally accepted that like, oh, you have a baby between the ages of 18, if not younger, and 25, and then if you don't make it past 25 and you don't have a kid, you're basically an old woman at that point. Like that is just a
Yeah,
blueprint
yeah,
of a lot of society.
yeah.
Shoot, even in Japan today, if you're not married by the age of 25, you're kind of like, don't they have like a weird tradition with like a cake or something like that, where they basically signify, oh, you're old now, like you don't have a baby, so here's a cake. It's really weird. And
Cool.
so even though we do live in this enlightened society of education, there's still a lot of places that this is very much embedded. Which I do think there
Mhm.
is a beauty in this world that we do have the ability for women to be not take that path. And I think that is a benefit of our modern society is women actually have the ability to sit back and reflect on themselves and what they want to do,
Mhm.
and go on those adventures. And so I'm very happy that men are not the only ones in the control of that, because I of course do think we were in balance with those things.
Yeah, yeah. You don't hear so many stories of the women traveling in the Celtic folklore. Although you had female druidesses, the Bandruai, and they would have presumably traveled about, I imagine. I think that one of the stories is encountering one of them on a journey, on a pilgrimage somewhere. So it did exist. It was a thing, but interestingly, it was mostly sort of, yeah, more your Arthurian folklores and your warrior men that were doing
Yeah.
this.
Well, and I think,
Mm.
it's also a safety thing as well. I mean, we still worry about that today. You hear 18-year-old man wants to go to a backpack across Europe, and you're like, okay, cool. But you hear 18-year-old woman wants to backpack across Europe, and you're like, oh my God, you're going to get raped or killed. So it's
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah.
it is very different. And
Mm.
like, one of the people I encountered on my travels was a Hungarian woman, and we ended up traveling together for a time, very platonically. It was really great. And a lot of when I would talk to people, about my travels, they'd be like, "Oh, that's great." Then the moment I was like, "Yeah, I met a solo female traveler," they're like, "Why would you do that?"
Yeah. I remember getting a lot of concern about this as well. The first time I came to Glastonbury, I travelled overnight by myself, on foot, literally on foot, no shoes, because I wanted to connect with the ley lines and
Naturally.
the naturally. What else is a witch going to do?
Wow, are you wearing shoes right now, you weirdo? Like, show me your feet.
But I really decided, like, I had to arrive in Glastonbury in style. And for me, that was a 12-hour walking pilgrimage from sunset to sunrise. And, I left and, um, it was exhausting actually, because I was used to doing 8 hours walking because I'd just done the Santiago journey across from France to Spain. So that's like 8 hours a day for a month. Walking really long distances. So I was already used to that. And I came back and I had good, strong legs for it and a good, strong back for my backpack. But what I didn't realize is that feeling I would get about midnight through to about 4 a.m. when you're in the darkness and you're walking through woodlands. And my first thought was, oh my God, I am literally the perfect victim for a UFO abduction right now.
Not a bandit in the woods, a UFO.
Yeah, I was like, I'm getting abducted. This is it. They're gonna come and collect me, take me back home to Andromeda. That's the end of it. But then,
Something tells me you would have
you
liked that.
I would have loved it. I'd be like, take my money. But you do worry as a woman because you suddenly realize that you're actually quite vulnerable. You can go on these adventures, but there's a common sense part that goes, but how am I going to defend myself if I come across trouble? Maybe that is just that in of itself is why there are less stories of it, in the Celtic folklore of women traveling like that.
Yeah.
Because it does, I got my penknife out at 3 a.m. just in case. I was literally walking along the roads with a penknife hidden up my hoodie sleeve. Like,
Mm.
yeah, because you just, you realize that you're quite vulnerable traveling as a woman sometimes in those situations.
Something I just realized as well, like one of the elements of male travel that has been more accessible is through military and war.
Mm,
Is especially even reading like Roman stories, they were the first known. I mean, obviously we had like Alexander the Great, we had the
yeah.
Mesopotamian, the Egyptian, and stuff like that. But like Rome really stands out as like the romanticization of the legion. And we even have
Yeah.
those stories today of join the legion and go fights with in Germania, or go to the Britannia. You might end
Yeah.
up in the east. Like there was this big concept of like if you join the legion, you can travel. And that is still a selling point of the
Mm,
US military today. Like, oh, if you join the military, you can travel the world. You can see
right.
a lot of sand, but you'll travel the world.
Yeah, you'll also see a lot of death, but we won't mention
Travel
that
the
on the advert.
world. But it's something that gets young men. I mean, I remember being
Yeah.
18 when I didn't quite know what I wanted to do, and the military was a possible option for me, and that was the selling point. Like I would like went on their website, and they're like, "You could see the world." I'm like, I would like to see the world, and at that time, I didn't have the modality or the understanding of how to do it myself,
Mm.
and so it's one of the most easily accessible ways to get out of your hometown and be somewhere new, even if you are killing people in the process.
Absolutely. And our grandparents would have also done that. I realized once my granddad wrote a little autobiography about he was in the Royal Air Force, but that involved a lot of traveling about. And it was just like a gang of guys having fun. It was like a gap year. I swear they were just like literally getting wasted, going on holiday here, there, and everywhere, as well as doing all the war stuff. But I think so much of that time was spoken about in such a fond way. When you speak to people from that generation, they're kind of like reminiscing over it. They're quite nostalgic about those times, and
Yeah.
maybe it's because it does tap into that archaic idea of, learning to become a man through trial, through challenges, through travel, journey. It is the classic hero's journey, isn't it? Wrapped
Yeah.
up in a war story.
Well, and also I think with community as well. When I talk to people who are in the military now, that's the
Mm,
thing that they struggle with the most when they get out is losing that sense of community and camaraderie they have with people.
exactly.
Um, because
Yeah.
we're in deficit of that. Because even if like in the the ancient times, if you would have gone out to war and you somehow managed to make it back home, at least you have your community still there, hopefully. And that's what you're
Yeah.
defending as well. You're defending your community. You're defending your village. And I think again we have less of that now. We're more. It feels more like the military, obviously, with what's going on right now. Much more
Mm,
about defending the rich and defending the elite than defending your village.
yeah.
And it's much more noble to defend your village, and it feels much better when you come home defending your village versus defending a billionaire. And that's
Yeah.
sadly just the time. And I
Yeah.
think that's that attributes to a lot to what's going on with military suicides and things like that. Is they've
Yeah.
almost taken away that sense of adventure and camaraderie, which
Yeah.
is sad. We need that.
I know. So here's a question, right? So for people that are listening and they're walking the pagan path and they're connecting to these deities, what would you advise them to do to connect with the hero's journey that we read about in these pagan stories? Like, if you had someone sit down, like in a life coach setting, and be like, how can I tap into the hero's journey as a pagan? What would your advice be for them?
We allowing them time to type. Just let us know your answers down below. Um, I think one thing I could actually say a little bit without directly answering that is something I was reflecting on a little bit before we started. Is our concept of the journey doesn't need to be so far.
Hmm.
Because I think it's easy for people to look, like based on our conversation, you need to walk the path to Santiago, or you need to do this Glastonbury walk, or do what I did. But also if like you are in that hermit stage, like you don't want to leave the house because AC is great, maybe step one for you is going outside. You
Oh
don't have
God.
to, yeah, you don't have to just go across the world. You can go across the city, or you could go to that show you've been wanting to go to, or that park. And for those people in those early stages, and then like later on I think it could become going to that village, like, something I really take a lot of joy in even now, having been someone that's traveled the world, is going to that village. Like, something I really take a lot of joy in even now, having been someone that's traveled the world, is going to that village. Like, something I really take a lot of joy in even now, having been someone that's traveled the world, is going to that village. Like, something I really take a lot of joy in even now, having been someone that's traveled the world, is going to that village. Like, something I really take a lot of joy in even now, having been someone that's traveled the world, is going to that village. Like, something I really take a lot of joy in even now, having been someone that's traveled the world, is going to that village. Like, something I really take a lot of joy in even now, having been someone that's traveled the world, is going to that village. Like, something I really take a lot of joy in even now, having been someone that's traveled the world, is going to that village. Like, something I really take a lot of joy in even now, having been someone that's traveled the world, is going to that village. Like, something I really take a lot of joy in even is I like going to small towns. Like there's a lot of small towns near me with a lot of really good charm. And that's one of the things with like my bike riding. I like riding my bike to a small town, having a cup of coffee or a beer, and coming back.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
and
It doesn't
that's
have to
its
be
own
great.
adventure.
Yeah. I was going to say as well to add a more pagan element to that. My advice would be to choose like a sacred site that's close to you, even if that's like an old rock, an ancient tree, it can be anything like that. And just taking a little ritual kit, taking your oracle cards, some incense to burn, something to offer, and setting off with an intention to learn more about yourself and work out what is 8 hours away from that site. So make it a full on walk, like not just a casual walk, do a full on day hike. If you're in pairs, I would say do night hikes because they're just awesome and you see the world very differently and it feels much more spiritually charged, I think, at night personally. But
Hmm.
to do like a night pilgrimage is an amazing thing to do. It's a completely like out of the box experience that's not really talked about. Um, and make little fires along the way, talk around the fire, write, journal, play music to the cows in the field, stargaze, write your insights down. And when you get to that place, to leave an offering, leave maybe an old part of yourself that you've let go of on the road, and then return back, just to return home. And you'll always level up and there'll be something new about you, even if it's just a small day hike. But I think that helps people to tap into the hero's journey, is that if there's an element of challenge, an element of something that's outside of the box, and a goal, like something that you're getting to at the end, something that's important or ancient or sacred at the end, like I said, even if it's an old tree, it's worth going to.
That's a really beautiful idea. I mean, I even find that inspiring. I might try to do that myself. I like that. But
Oh, I
clearly
know.
you're from England and not from the US.
Well, I know there's probably lots of animals that can kill you out there. The
Yeah,
worst you'll
well,
get in England is a nasty bite from a badger or something.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, well, then I think of all the paths we have to walk here. Like most of them are roads, so it's just like you have to walk on a
Oh,
road with drunk drivers at night, and
oh,
you
yeah.
can't just start a fire wherever you want. You gotta like be at a campsite. Yeah, no, you're
You don't
playing
want to get
music in the
shot
night.
at.
Yeah, yeah, you're gonna get shot.
Don't trespass over fields.
Yeah, but again, I think that's interesting because that is my American mindset, is like that's not possible because it's been bred
Oh,
into me as a society, both modern and historic, that it's not something you do here. And so maybe that is
sad, isn't
something that
it?
I mean, luckily I have a really nice like bike path near me, but that's also a walking path, and there's a lot of towns along it. So that I think, if I would do it, I would choose a town on that path and walk
Mm.
to that town on that path because that's a lot safer. But yeah, walking a country road at night in the United States is a little dangerous.
Oh, but I mean, before we started this podcast, me and Jacob were talking because you're going to visit England, hopefully, sometime in maybe September.
Soon,
Maybe
yeah,
we should
hopefully.
do it then. We could do our next podcast in the middle of the night on a country road with our friends. We'll get a little group of friends together, do a night pilgrimage.
What would be a good night pilgrimage site? That would be like a night walk away.
So, I mean, I'm lucky because I live in Glastonbury, Somerset, and it's very, there's so many walking routes. There's so many established country walking routes that we still have here. There's a lot that we don't have these days as well. That's a whole other argument for another day. So
Yeah.
I try and see the best of the situation. I'm like, there are a lot of established routes that are taken care of and, offered up to the public. So I would even, there's even a walking route from where I live in Glastonbury where it just goes up the hills, up through a few farms, across some meadows, over to the Tor, down to the White Spring and back home. And that's perfect because you get to go up a hill, you get to, pray to your gods, leave an offering, you go to the White Spring, you collect your sacred water. And another really lovely idea is to take the spring water from somewhere sacred and connect it with the next sacred site. So I don't know if you have, I mean, presumably you must have lots of springs in natural springs in
A
America.
bit. Yeah, yeah, for sure. It's just
Yeah.
finding them. I was just looking up right now,
Yeah.
like, because like Serpent Mounds, the most known one, but it's like 22 hours walk away from me. so far.
Goodness. Yeah. So you would have to travel out somewhere to then begin your walk, wouldn't you? Something like that. But that's still a worthy trip as
Oh
well.
my gosh. Yeah, everything's so far from me. Like I was like, oh, I'll go to the Yellow Springs, which is similar to the Red Springs, 22 hours walk.
Oh, goodness.
And that's with the path.
See, England, it's like you can just there's a spring basically in every village, isn't there? Or there's like
Yeah.
sort of water source in Somerset, and so
I mean,
you can actually just walk along those country roads connecting the water sources. And another lovely thing, which I'm sure our pagan ancestors would have done, is to sing to the waters, to literally, take our offerings to different lands, to sing to the waters, to collect the spring waters, and reconnect them with new springs and stuff as well. There's lots of nice things to do without getting on a plane, going to Vegas. You know
yeah.
what I mean? Yeah, forget those kinds of gap years. We're almost getting it right. The gap
Yeah.
year is
Well,
coming back for a reason, but we're just aiming slightly off at the moment.
yeah. And that is really interesting is like, I can't tell you how many times I've filmed a video, like even recently, like in parks that are just near me, and people commenting like, wow, it's so pretty. And I'm just like, what?
Yeah,
This
yeah,
park,
yeah.
like, the world is just always beautiful. And I think the it's such an old parable and old saying, but the grass is not always greener on the other side. I think that's one of the greatest lessons you learn when you travel, and you wander and go on that adventure, is that you realize the grass that you had at home is actually pretty awesome.
Oh my God, it's a classic
Yeah,
Hobbit lesson, isn't it? It's
yeah,
total Lord of the Rings. Yeah, I remember realizing that. I went traveling the world and I was like, the best place for me is England. I love it. I wouldn't want to live anywhere else. And it
yeah.
it made me fall in love with my home. And I didn't have that sense of appreciation before I went traveling. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. What do you think is one of the most important lessons you learned from adventuring?
To trust. I think there was when I left home at 18, I think I had a bit of a scarcity mindset where I was like, oh, I'm going to run out of money. And what if I can't find places to sleep and all of this? And you learn straight away how many people there are out there that will help, that will offer their kindness, that are generous. And I really just I got a sense of like angels on my path when I was traveling. I was like, wow, if I just surrender and trust to the flow of life, it will hold me. There will always be a kind stranger on the path that can help or, offer a place to stay or whatever. You have to use discernment, like I said, especially as a woman in the world. You have to be safe. But ultimately, the lesson was learning to surrender to life and to let it interact back with you and
Yeah,
to not plan things so rigorously as well, to not actually have it mapped out and be like, I'm going to go here, then here, then here, but rather to follow kind of like the land omens, see where life kind of is nudging you to go next. And, you meet someone
yeah,
synchronistically and they lead you to a new place. And
yeah, yeah.
that's when the real magic unfolds with traveling for me.
That's literally how we met. Like we literally were just
Yeah.
random. Like I don't even know who messaged who first. It was just like I think you might have messaged me or like you should come to Avalon, and I'm like, where the fuck is
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's a whole adventure,
Yeah.
wasn't it?
And
Just
then oh yeah, was it like a month later? I was in a car on my way there. You know?
Yeah, this is it. This is it. Life does open itself up to you, but you have to be willing to look for those omens and those people and the little nudges and quiet clues from life.
Yeah. Everything to me, we talk about like paganism, like something I've been reflecting a lot. And I plan on making a video here soon is like reflecting on the gods and the nature of them and what they are. And I think I feel in my own personal opinion, I've been feeling the distance there exists between us and the gods at times. And the
Mm,
true connection comes from humanity and what we can do together. And
yeah,
our unified practice and ritual and ceremony and not just that, but the network that we create. Because I've kind of shut myself off from the network as almost like a ritual. Like, I need to like fully go into the self. And now that I'm starting to hit those threads again of the network that I've created around the world, not from giving people money or anything like that, just from kindness, from friendship. And
yeah,
it's so amazing to be like, hit that thread and it's like, what's going to happen? And I just talk to that person and naturally we create something together, just like you and I. You
Right.
know, one of us
Yeah,
reached out and hit that thread, and now we do a podcast together, and we've been doing it over a year. And I've stayed at your house
exactly.
and it love Glastonbury. I wrote a book. That book I wrote wouldn't exist if you none of one of us wouldn't have hit that thread.
That's so true. What a weird thought. Yeah,
Yeah,
so many things can come from one kind of like move in one direction.
yeah. And I think
Yeah.
that's, I have a lot of people, I think that, comment that struggle to leave the house, that do feel the hermit, and they always ask like, how can I connect more to paganism
Mm,
from the comfort of my own home? And the truth is, like, a lot of feeling the connection to paganism, I think, is seeking discomfort, and
yeah.
finding what exists on the other side of it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's that push into the unknown.
Yeah, and I definitely think that's the sense of adventure that we need. I
Yeah.
think we as humans are naturally adventurous, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. That makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? Because at one point we'd have been fairly nomadic, and then even when we sort of developed agriculture, we would have still ventured out to hunt or to gather and forage. So there's always this sense of seeking that's in the heart of the human spirit.
Yeah. No, really reflecting on, like, you're talking about walking, because it's something I've started to lose sight of, because especially again as an American, we're so much more used to our cars as being our gateway to getting places. But I remember right when I came back I was starting to land from my adventures. I was staying with my grandparents at the time, and one of the things they would tell people is like, "Oh, Jacob, he's a walker. He'll just walk anywhere." And,
The water.
and that's like an alien thing to the American mindset, is like, "Oh, I'm just gonna walk somewhere instead."
He's a
Um,
walker. As though this is a unique skill for a human being to
right, but
have.
it's like it should be he's a human. He walks places, but it's like in America, especially, we've gotten away from that identity, and someone
Yeah.
who decides to walk somewhere is either got a DUI and doesn't have a license, is poor, or is a walker.
So funny. Oh my goodness.
I was just
So
listening to a podcast
maybe
today that they said that we're actually designed to walk between 14,000 and 20,000 steps a day. That's what we need.
what's that?
It's like seven
In my-
miles, 7 to 15 miles, I think, something like that.
Yeah, I could believe that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I used to love doing like 7 hour hikes every weekend, but now my dogs are too old.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So let's stop that. But yeah, there's something about traveling, even just traveling for the day somewhere on foot. It feeds the soul in a way that feels so wholesome.
Oh, it also gives us time to think. And I think that's
Yeah.
one of our biggest problems with the smartphones is, and we're not the only people talking about this, is, when we pull out that smartphone, it doesn't actually allow our mind to decompress in the right healthy way. Like, it might
Yeah.
shut our mind off by feeding it, like overstuffing it, but we need that time to walk to figure shit
Yeah,
out.
absolutely. It's
Yeah.
my the number one thing I do if I'm triggered. I'll go for a walk. And, that can really help because sometimes it's like getting out of your own way, isn't it? And you have to get back in the body to feel what you're feeling to do that. And if you get stuck in a rut in your head, that's only gonna, you don't want to do damage. So yeah, moving about, walking for hours is really, really good for the soul. Really good.
Yeah, something I've always done is, the way I connect with people is like, if I'm talking to someone on the phone, I actually usually am taking a walk. I very rarely like sit down
Yeah.
and talk to someone. I actually am always walking, or I'm like voice messaging people. Like, a lot of times I wake up in the morning, and that's why I send voice messages, because I take a walk and I send voice
Mm,
messages and stuff. I don't know. Yeah, it really helps. Um,
yeah.
but something I was going to ask is, as far as like the relationship, let's go real normal people here. Let's go holidays. Like, this identity of just like going to a beach for 7 days. If that is the reality for someone, they can't go on this epic adventure, or they can't do the 8 hour walk. They just get their beach holiday once
Mm.
a year. How can they bring more of a sense of adventure to their normal human being garden variety beach holiday?
It's a very interesting one. I guess you could always do little walks I mean, whenever I see beaches, I'm always like, where's the cave? Take me to the nearest cave because I know there's caves around here if there's a beach. And I think going into caves and connecting with your ancestors in there, So like singing songs to the sea, listening for messages back, doing rituals, like drawing kind of a spiral in the sand, putting a candle in the middle, burying something, sending a message out to sea in an eco-friendly bottle. There's lots of things that you can do that feel like an adventure, even if you can't go far. Like I said, you only really need to do like a couple of hours walk, even maybe, just to go from one place to another and just feel into the rhythm of the body and connect with your soul, for it to feel like a little miniature pilgrimage.
Yeah. Yeah, I think for me, I don't know what your relationship was with holiday growing up. If you had like kind of like a family holiday kind of set up, like did you?
Yeah. Yeah, we had a really lovely, like, we would go away once a year somewhere. I was really lucky to be in a family that could do that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, where would like what's the places you would go? Like actually go to like, far away places, or would it be somewhere in the UK?
So there were, I mean, you obviously have the really fun stuff like Butlins in England, which are
What
like
did
the
you say?
caravan. They're called Butlins.
Butlins.
Butlins. They're
Butlins.
like caravan parks with a swimming pool in like the kind of seasidey town. So you'd have those. But then, we could also go on like little holidays to like Mallorca or Spain. And my family were like, I mean, my mum and dad have got more adventurous the older they've got. They are like they're going on gap years now, which is really cool. So I also think it's not an age limited thing. 'Cause my parents are like in the 60s and 70s, and they are like doing Angkor Wat and jumping out of planes still and things like that. Like doing skydives, and you can actually begin the adventure older later on in life as well.
You said might have to be a little
Um,
slower about it. Yeah.
yeah, I kind of worry for them. I'm like, Jesus Christ. I feel like how they probably felt about me at 18, like going on these mad
You're
adventures. But
fragile.
yeah, but
Well,
you know what I
but
mean.
yeah, yeah.
It's a lovely thing to see. I really love seeing it in my parents that there's this adventurous spirit and that there's this freedom that's caught up with them, this call to freedom that's caught up with them over the years. I'm glad they're exploring it.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean
What
that's something
about
that
you?
like yeah, well, my parent, it's so funny. Like, I'm just so different than my parents because they are so ingrained into the region of American identity that I exist in. There's two main places you go to in the United States, in Ohio, for vacation. You go to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, or you go to Gatlinburg, Tennessee. There's a few others, like there's Branson, Missouri, if you want to, go that way. You can go up to Cedar Point up in Lake Erie, so there's like set places
Mm,
that we're kind of like destined to go for holidays.
yeah.
And I say this like, I have family members who are, in the lower economic like levels of things, and they still go to these places. Like it's very much like everyone goes there, and there's definitely layers of experiences. But you go there, you play miniature golf, you eat really fatty, shitty food that's overpriced. You do like weird rides and like wax museums and freak
Yeah,
shows and aquariums. It's like, and that's the kind of like setup you have. And we did that
yeah.
every year. We did something like that. And it was just so, looking back on it now, like obviously I have warm family memories because it was, especially with grandparents and
Yeah,
stuff like that. But it's so not spiritual.
yeah, yeah.
There's so little spirituality to it. But at the same time, I say that. But Gatlinburg is a great example because Gatlinburg is really pretty. But my gosh, it is the most tourist trap. It's like Blackpool.
Oh
Um,
no.
oh, yeah, it's the most tourist trappy place ever.
Yeah.
But it is in a really pretty spot. It's in the mountains. And so like a few years ago, I decided to climb a mountain, and I went to Gatlinburg because the second tallest mountain in the Appalachian mountain range is there. And
Okay.
oh my gosh, it was rugged. There was giant rocks, there was snow, like completely in the wilderness, and only like 5 miles from Gatlinburg. And so I guess,
Oh.
one of the things I'm trying to encourage people, like you say, like seaside caves, like look beyond the tourist traps of the places that we normally go. Like if you have to go with your family, or if it's the only place you can get your family to go to, you
Yeah.
know, expand your radius just a little bit. And I think you can be really surprised what you can find, whether it's a seaside cave or a mountaintop or something like that.
Totally. I don't know if you've got a book like this for America, but in England there's a book called Magical Britain, which I'd highly recommend. It's an
I think
amazing
I've
book.
seen it.
It's got all of like the sacred sites, and it's just things like old trees, old rocks, old pilgrimage sites, and they're all free things that you can go to. There must be similar things, similar books for America, where it's not like holiday resorts, but more so just the leftover traces of our ancestors and the
Yeah, I
pilgrims.
think that's more like Atlas Obscura, I think is what it would be. It's like a bunch, especially out in like New Mexico, like Roswell, like old alien stuff and
Yeah,
whatnot. Yeah, yeah. I feel like
I
that would
went
be a
to
road trip you would like. You wouldn't like to go to like Area
I've done
51.
it. I've totally done it. I went to
Oh, have
Roswell
you?
when I was
Oh, did
18. It was
you?
one of yeah, yeah.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I traveled across Arizona when I was very young. But and I was just yeah. I didn't get abducted. It was a disappointment, quite frankly.
Are you sure?
Yep.
Are you sure?
Not a changeling. Last time I checked.
So Changeling just swapped out by the aliens. Is that what happened?
And yeah, don't tell
Yeah.
anyone.
Yeah.
But yeah. You know what I mean? There's those places, aren't there? They're pretty quirky and I mean like Monument Valley, incredible place. I went there and I just remember
Yeah.
being like, that feels like another planet in of itself. It's just incredible, those monuments, standing there and just looking
Yeah.
out over the desert at night. What a trip that is.
Mhm. Yeah, there's a duality here, for our, obviously I can't speak to every place on the planet, but in particular when it comes to North America, United States and England, there's such an interesting difference. People in England, I hear, they're like, "Oh yeah, England shit. I'll never go anywhere. It fucking sucks here." I'm like, "When's the last time you went to like an ancient site?" "Oh, look, I looked up ancient sites. There's 15 within a 5 mile radius of here." They're like, "Oh yeah, don't go there. It's fucking shit."
I
I'm like,
know, we
just
don't know where our bread's buttered, do we?
yeah, yeah. And I'm just like, I like want to shake people sometimes, especially in like Scotland, the amount of people I've met, Glasgow that, don't go to the Highlands because they're like, oh, that's just what a tourist school. Don't go there. It's like, no, the Highlands are dope. Like they are actually amazing. And there's, obviously you don't want to go to like Loch Ness, that's super cheesy. But at the same time, there's so many amazing ancient sites. And then the US, everyone, yeah, US is shit. Oh, sorry. US, it sucks here. It's terrible. And we have such natural beauty. Everywhere you
Yeah.
live, even in the cornfields, there's somewhere that is naturally beautiful. You can find it.
Yeah.
Our raw nature is something that other countries envy. It's
Yes.
incredible here.
Yeah. Yeah. It's beautiful. Beautiful. I remember it well. And this is the thing. Maybe it's not even about traveling somewhere. It's just going out and finding your local nature place, just camping there for the evening.
Yeah. No, there's this
Or
really
for like,
interesting. Oh, good.
oh no, that sounded interesting. You said the
Oh,
word
and it's not
interesting.
that interesting. Well, I still need to check it out. So especially with like North American sites like Native American. I was curious if there was any burial mounds or anything like that nearby, and there's actually one like a few miles away from me. It's actually at the highest point in the city, and there's a burial mound on the top of it, and like no one talks about it. I was like, well, that's interesting.
That's
So
amazing.
yeah, I
That's
actually I fucking walk. I wonder how far a walk there is. I'll look it
doing a
up.
little Google.
Yeah, yeah, doing a little Google.
Oh, yeah, I mean, imagine going there and doing an all-nighter, making a fire, and being by yourself in that nature. And that's a whole inner trip in of itself. Just being the confrontation of being alone in nature for an evening by a fire. If you really
Oh
want to
yeah.
connect with your ancestors and the nature and the spirits of the land, that's probably the way to do it, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. And I do think, I mean, ultimately, anytime it comes to adventures of the hero's journey, it's all just about shaking up the norm, so
Yeah.
that you can either learn something new or appreciate what you had.
Yeah.
And I think that's so important. And it's something I was just talking about with my partner today. Is I love doing challenges for myself. And the reason that
Mhm.
we all have air conditioning here is because it is stupid hot in the United States.
Yeah.
Stupid. And so summers are just brutal here. But air conditioning's only been around for like 80, 90 years, and especially in the common everyday home, not very long. And so that means people who are
Yeah.
living here, even the European settlers, without air conditioning for so long. And I'm like, how the fuck did they do that? It's
Yeah.
so hot. And so I was actually talking about going a day without air conditioning as like a way to honor the ancestors, just to see what it would be like. It's like, well, they survived it.
Yeah,
And so
yeah.
just to see what they went through and then be very grateful when the next day I come in and it's like I have air conditioning again.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, try it.
So yeah, try things. I think that's the ultimate lesson here. Is just try things.
Yeah, 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 exactly. That's where it's at. Stepping out of the box. Turn off
So
your aircon.
yeah, yeah. Even if that's what it takes. Well, hey, if you're a hermit and you want to get out of the house, let me tell you, you turn off the air conditioning this summer, you will get out of your house.
Yeah, you'll
Because
find a cave.
yeah, like I live in a cave right now because like all my blinds are down to like keep the sun out. But seriously, if I did not have air conditioning, I there's no way I would even be able to stay in here. You know,
Yeah,
it would be so hot.
yeah. Oh, sending prayers to you in the US.
Oh yeah, we have like what do they call it? Every year the news has different words. For some reason, the word dome is very important, like popular right now. We're in what is being called a heat dome.
Heat dome.
A heat dome. Yeah, it's just like a
Mm.
big area that's just like melting.
Someone's about to
Um,
drop a flat Earth theory in the
yeah,
news.
I guess so.
Bit of priming going on here.
But here at the end of the podcast, is there any other, adventurous or non-adventurous advice you would give to people for solstice or for the summer in general this time of year? I mean, obviously we're past the solstice, so just for summer, really.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, it's that time of the year where the land is full charge, so every fruit and vegetable and herb is reaching its full potential. And I think the same is for us. I think it's a good time for us to realize, that if you want to go on an adventure, the time is now. You're at a point of actualization, you're full power, you're full of pizzazz, it's the zenith of the year. So go out there, get out on an adventure. And I think it's a good time to feel confident enough to do so, to push yourself out of the out of the norm, the normal routine, and try something new.
Yeah, I think for me, it's understanding. I can sit here and complain about the temperature, but the temperature isn't always the same every day. Even yesterday, it was super mega hot yesterday. But in the morning, I met a friend for coffee. We were outside. We enjoyed the morning. I hid during the midday, which is what you're supposed to do. Even in a natural world, you don't stand out in the sun when it's super hot. So, like
Yeah.
in the midday, I did things inside. But then the moment the evening started cooling down, I got back out again. It's still very important to get time
Mm.
outside and appreciate
Mm.
the long days. Even here, the sun's not setting till like 10:30. That's incredible.
Wow. Yeah.
And so yeah, between the hours of 11 and 5, it might be uncomfortable, but in those excess hours, do something with it. Don't just fall into the routine of Netflix and stuff like that during this time of
Oh
year.
God, no.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Forget
Like
that.
could be said, the sun is a powerful thing. I just, I did a video on the sun, and a lot of my reflections on it is the fact that the sun is a life giver. It's light giver.
Yeah.
It's an incredible force, but it is also like a very like, um, I don't want to say aggressive god, but also it can burn your skin. It can make you too hot.
Mm.
It can kill you. Like it really is like a very like omniscient god. It's the life
Yeah.
giver and life taker at the same time.
Yeah. 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 Absolutely. It's a bit of both, isn't it? So are
Yeah.
you going to go on any adventures?
Well, in my pedestrian life, so we have with the Fellowship of Northern Traditions, which I still am involved in. We're doing a men's retreat next month. So it's not too far. It's like a 2-hour drive in Kentucky, I think.
Yeah.
But I'm really looking forward to that space. We were talking about men's relationship in Glastonbury before the podcast started, and I'm actually really excited. Like one of the ideas that I'm bringing to the table. It's not my event. It's two other guys are heading it. But what I'm doing is sacred council every night. So the first
Mm.
night we're going to just have kind of like an open share about what masculinity means to us. The
Yeah.
second night we're all going to do this around a fire and and have like a sacred ceremony element to it. The second night we're going to have a conversation about toxic masculinity, and then the final night we're actually going to talk about sexuality and men's health. And so I just think these are really important conversations. And so there is going to be a ceremony and things like that, obviously with the sun. But I'm just looking forward to having sacred counsel with other men in a healthy way.
Oh, that sounds so nice. Getting the brotherhood back together.
Yeah, yeah, it's
Yeah.
very important. But other than that, just yeah, I really want to get back to England, and see all my
Yeah.
lovely English friends. It's been too long already. It's been nearly a
Yeah.
year. It's been too
I
long since I've been
know.
back.
Sacrilege. Well, it's here waiting for you. And I think, it'll be nicer at the end of the summer anyway. And, that we call it summer until sowing, don't we? That's
Yeah,
summer's end. So you have, yeah, all of that time until then, the weather's normally quite good, even until like October these days, I think.
yeah. What about you? Are you doing any holidays?
Nope. I am dog bound to England
Oh
whilst
yeah,
they're
yeah,
in their veteran years. They're 15 years old now, so they are not getting on any planes. But
yeah.
it's made me fall in love with England. So there'll probably be little trips down south to kind of Totnes and Cornwall and other sacred sites. And yeah, just really appreciating the land that's around, the small little spaces
Do
and
do you ever
little.
get up to Wales?
No, but I should. That's a
It's
very
not
good
that
reminder.
far away.
I know it's literally about a 2 hour drive from Glastonbury. It's one of
Yeah.
those things. It's like it's on my doorstep. Why am I not doing that more? So
There is almost like it feels like a magical gateway between Wales and the rest of England, though. Like it does feel
yeah,
a bit more of a journey to get there.
yeah, yeah. So maybe I'll do that. That'll be my goal for the next month is
I
do
do
a
know. Um, I would really love to do this. Isn't there a coast? There's a coastal path that goes all around the perimeter of Wales.
yeah.
I think that would be a really epic journey to do.
It's cool, isn't it? It's so
Yeah.
cool. Yeah,
Well,
that'd be
that's
nice.
what. Again, one of the things I love about the UK, like, in all honesty, if I was able, I would consider moving to the UK at some point in my life, because I do like the amount of coastal paths and walking paths there are, and the ability to just be like, I'm just going to walk around the coast of Wales. Like you can do that, and that's so cool.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's amazing, isn't it? So yeah, I mean, yeah, I feel like I don't even need to leave England. I completely like we are spoiled for choice here of nice places to pilgrimage over to.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, let us know, if you've made it this far. Thank you so much for all you amazing people that listen to Kubi and I ramble about summer and solstices and paganism and adventures. So if you're one of those hermits, again, I know that sometimes these conversations can be a little like, jabby at you, like, telling you to get
Mm.
out. But I've never met a person who couldn't benefit from a little bit more adventure. It's so beneficial to challenge yourself, to seek a little discomfort in your life, and see who
Mm.
you are on the other side.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, well, very good. And if you're lucky, you'll get to meet someone like Kubi and start a podcast together one day.
Oh, it's been
um,
fun.
yeah, it's been fun. But thank you everyone for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next episode of the Tree Life Podcast.
See you.
Bye bye.
Bye.